Hello again. Welcome to Module 2. In our last module, we provided an overview of what user experience or UX is. We covered the subdisciplines of UX design, UX writing, and UX research, among others. We also introduced the three fields of UX research, including qualitative research, quantitative research, and design research.
In today's module, we'll go into more details about these three fields of UX research by deep diving into a number of core user research methods and concepts. While this isn't an exhaustive presentation of all the research methods that exist, it should help orient you as you shift your mental model from academic research methods and mode of working to that of UX research. All right, let's begin with qualitative research methods. We'll be covering three methods that are core to qualitative research in the private sector. They include ethnography, diary studies, and user interviews.
Let's turn first to ethnography. As aspiring UX researchers, you will come across a number of job ads that call for candidates with experience and training in something referred to as ethnography. We call out ethnography with scare quotes here to call attention to the fact that ethnography in academia is quite different from ethnography in the private sector. In the private sector, where time and resources are constrained, qualitative methods have been retrofitted to emulate the immersive participant observation of ethnographic research and fieldwork, but more amenable to the truncated timelines of the private sector. You'll come across UX researchers referring to various research methods, including video diaries, virtual home tours, simulated experiences and exercise, and even collaborative research as ethnographic research. In the private sector, ethnography is less about a specific research method and more of a goal-oriented approach applicable to a wide range of qualitative research. Because of this shift in mentality of ethnographic research being more of an approach, we will be referring to it as the ethnographic approach and defining it as such in what follows. We can consider UXR research methods to be ethnographic if and when their focus is on identifying the intersection of context or environment with a person's understanding, perception, and behavior. With the ethnographic approach, such things as culture, social values and meaning, and beliefs enter into discussion as significant variables shaping and informing an individual's experience with and needs for a given product or service. There are several other existing methods within UX research that have similar applied objectives and approaches. These include grounded theory, contextual inquiry, and foundational research. Regardless of how the data was collected, that is, what UX research method was applied, ethnography also has a common unifying element around or regarding the analytical technique applied. The analytical technique itself is reminiscent of its shared lineage with academia. We refer to this analytical technique as deep analysis. Deep analysis looks into the logical associations and meanings inherent in the sayings and doings of people. These associations derive meaning and value from broader contextual factors such as culture and history, as well as politics. This aspect of looking into the logical associations between both context and people's perceptions and understanding renders deep analysis distinct from the typical approach in UX research to analysis, which is that of pattern recognition. Pattern recognition is essentially, as the name suggests, going through data and identifying commonly occurring phenomena and marking them or earmarking them as patterns.
Another very common qualitative research method, diary studies, prompt participants to log their experiences or thoughts either at the moment of engagement with a product, service, or event, or at a specific recurring sequence of time designated by the researcher. Diary studies last for a set length of time, ranging anywhere from 24 hours to several months, depending on what is being studied. The value of a diary study is the visibility they provide into the context and rhythm of the participants' everyday life. The quality of data produced by a diary study can vary as they rely on participants' investment and communication for each of their entries. Because of this, diary studies are often used in combination with other methods such as interviews, contextual inquiry, or even focus groups. Research will utilize diary studies as daily reminders to get participants to reflect on specific subjects, preparing them for subsequent interviews or focus groups. The diary study itself may include what is typically referred to as homework, which consists of specific tasks such as creative projects and thought exercises to elicit participants' emotions, values, perceptions, and logical associations. Qualitative researchers will look to diary studies to inform areas for further unpacking or probing in follow-up interviews or focus groups. Various apps are available that make doing diary studies more sophisticated and accessible for study participants. Some of these applications allow for video diary functionality, allowing you to include audio and/or video.
Entering into UX, you'll come across a number of mentions regarding different interview techniques. These typically include structured interviews, unstructured interviews, semi-structured interviews, and in-depth interviews or IDIs. Because semi-structured interviews become self-explanatory upon gaining further understanding of structured and unstructured interviews, we won't be going into detail regarding semi-structured interviews in this module. Additionally, in-depth interviews only nominally differentiate from interviews in general, so we'll also put that to the side for our module. What we will get into are structured and unstructured interviews, how they differ and when you might be applying them, and throw in a bonus unconventional categorization of focus groups as our third type of interviewing method covered. Structured interviews have a scripted set of questions that the interviewer closely adheres to. The focus of structured interviews is to assess the variability and replicability of participants' responses across a set of variables such as user segment, demographics, situational context, and more. Because the interview questions are fixed and consistent, you're better able to compare and contrast the variables in question across the interviews to identify difference. Unstructured interviews are more loosely scripted. They are oriented around a set of key objectives, questions, themes, or topics that one wants to ensure you hit upon in each of the sessions. This allows for more of an organic emergence of participant-led conversations. Participants are actively encouraged to explore connections between thoughts, emotions, experiences, and opinions. The interview takes on more of a therapist or even a philosopher role, encouraging participants to go a little bit deeper and plumb the depths of certain turns of phrases and qualifiers. So, for example, if a participant says that they only sometimes engage with a product or a feature, you can explore rather freely and in great detail what that condition of possibility is for that sometimes to occur and how it might differ from the majority of other times where they don't engage with that feature. Focus groups will range anywhere from 5 to 10 participants. Going above or below this range will result in a degradation in the quality of feedback you receive. As an interview technique, focus groups are incredibly powerful for exploring social dynamics, such as the spread of knowledge and information, including misinformation. It also is really great at understanding the dynamics of peer influence and interpersonal power plays. A critical element for the success of your focus group in regards to exploring social dynamics will be the composition of participants in each of your sessions. If you want to parse out, for example, how group thinking and social pressures polarize members of a focus group, or perhaps even result in changing of opinions for some of the session participants, you will want to be sure that you bring together the right groups or camps of individuals to represent their point of view in those discussions. The number of focus groups you run scale according to the number of social variables you want to assess, as you'll need to capture all of those possible combinations.
Recalling in Module 1 our introduction into the three fields of user research, we described design research as being closely aligned with the design and experience of the product. The methods leveraged in design research therefore assess if the product is easy to understand and use, elicits satisfaction, even joy, or serves an important function for the user. Three core methods of design research include usability testing, journey mapping, and card sorting.
Usability testing is the most widely known UX research method among non-experts. When we say non-experts, we're referring here to cross-functional partners within the private sector, including product managers, engineers, and even executive leadership such as the CEO or director. For many, usability testing is synonymous with what UX researchers do and what they focus on. While we understand from the modules presented prior, as well as this module, that isn't a true reflection of the role and responsibilities of UX researchers, but it is the most widely known. Usability testing is also the most performed research method within UXR, and because of that, it's also the most heavily documented. A simple internet search will bring an ample number of resources on how best to perform usability testing. And so we encourage you to reference those resources and do some of your own research in this space. To present a degree of an introduction here, though, we'll talk a little bit more about usability testing in this and the next slide. Usability testing, as mentioned previously, is the cornerstone of design research and involves close collaboration between a UX researcher and their cross-functional partners of designers and writers. And in some cases, depending on what's being tested, you might even collaborate with developers and engineers as well. To perform a usability test, a designer will produce a prototype with some degree of fidelity to the final finished form of the product to be launched and designed. These prototypes can range anywhere from a mock-up, low fidelity, high fidelity, and to the finished product. Mock-ups are typically black and white, crude depictions, hand-sketched, and sometimes vary significantly from the final product. Low fidelity bears more resemblance to the finished product, but it's still rather crude and has very limited functionality. And finally, high fidelity design prototypes look and function very closely to the finished product. In a usability test, a study participant interacts directly with the prototype, manipulating it to execute a set of tasks, while the designer and researcher observe the interaction, ask probing questions, and provide the participant with clarification if it's needed. In the event the prototype is low fidelity or a mock-up, a participant can also engage with it indirectly by telling the designer or researcher how they move through the prototype to execute a certain task. For example, a participant might be asked by the researcher to contact the company through the website. In that event, the participant would describe how they would go about finding the Contact Us option through the existing website, starting from the homepage. So, for example, a participant might note that first they would look in the three white lines in the top left corner, see if there's an option for Contact Us in the dropdown, then click on that and move from there. As a researcher running a usability test, you essentially cycle through a mantra in your own mind that continually prompts the research participant to think out loud, to respond to what they think will happen next, why have they done what they did, and how did it make them feel. The UXR will take notes where a participant had difficulty executing on a task or moving from point A to point B in a journey or flow, Any misaligned expectations or perceptions, the emotional state of the participant, a user's mental model, especially if it conflicts with the one they're engaging with embedded in the product, and the participant's ability to navigate through the website, product, service, or space.
Another common design research method is user journey mapping, or simply journey mapping. Journey mapping involves the incremental or stepwise articulation of key tasks or milestones in an experience that cumulatively result in a complete end-to-end experience. You can think of such things as a sign-up experience or a purchase experience as types of stepwise processes a user may go through in order to reach an end state or goal, that is, signing up or purchasing something. Journey mapping can flow from two directions. One, it can flow from the current engagement of users with a product or products, or two, from the type of engagements product creators want to foster with their users. Journey mapping should eventually become circular, bringing intentionality to product strategy and design decisions based on user behavior, ensuring designs are intuitive for users to navigate through the product experience successfully. Here's an example of how a design researcher may choose to create a journey map of a user persona's end-to-end experience with a task or milestone breakdown coinciding with the tracking of their emotional status, actions taken, and difficulties encountered. There will likely be numerous of these journey map cards created depending on the user type or persona and the particular journey being mapped. There are a number of varieties of journey mapping, the most common of which is user journey mapping, which we've already described. There's also jobs to be done, wayfinding, and overall product journey, among others. One can choose across these journey types depending on one's research question. So, for example, jobs to be done is great if your focus is on outcomes or objectives when using tools and carrying out tasks, which comprise the individual components of the journey being mapped.
Card sorting is often applied when building information architecture for a website or a web application. Information architecture, or IA, is a hierarchical nesting or presentation of information and calls to action as they appear to an end user of a website or digital application. The logic of information grouping and their subgroupings are identified through the act of card sorting. The researcher will break down the entirety of a website or application to its incremental parts, building out conceptual or keyword cards. These might be physical cards or virtual cards, but they fundamentally look the same, where there is a term or a concept written out, one per card. The card sorting exercise has the research participants go through and organize these cards into logical groupings and hierarchies. As they build out those groupings, the participant explains the logic behind their formation and why they're grouped together. The participants' card sort can be compared to the internal team's card sort, and the results can then be reconciled and consolidated to meet the product team's objectives for that product design.
The last UX research specialization we will discuss today is that of quantitative UX research. Unlike design research and to some extent even qualitative research, quantitative research competency generally requires a background or advanced degree in a science that deals with statistical analysis, such as neuroscience, sociology, and psychology.
Surveys are a means of collecting data from a large number of people quickly. Unlike qualitative research methods, quantitative surveys enable a researcher to assess across a large participant pool how many participants think or feel a certain way about a topic, garnering a better understanding of the significance of qualitative insights at scale. Surveys can be used to capture user needs early in a concept ideation of a product, assess people's attitudes towards a competitor product, or capture user sentiment and satisfaction with an existing product. There are two very common types of quantitative surveys utilized in UX. They include customer satisfaction, or CSAT, and benchmarks. A customer satisfaction survey, or CSAT, is commonly run after the launch or update of a product. It is applied to determine how happy or unhappy customers are. There are a few varieties of a satisfaction test. They include net satisfaction and net promoter score. Like the CSAT, they're effectively short surveys taken by product users about the strength or intensity of their attitude and feelings about a recent experience with a product. The different measures, CSAT, net satisfaction, and net promoter score, all have pros and cons, but they still effectively stand as check the engine light signals, letting the researcher know by looking under the hood if there is an issue going on, such as low satisfaction, that needs further exploration. Here you can see a typical customer satisfaction survey. There is a response spectrum ranging from very dissatisfied on the left to very satisfied on the right, with numbers sometimes correlated to show leveling. The typical way in which a customer satisfaction score is derived is through the division of the number of satisfied and very satisfied customers, so the fours and the fives, over the total number of respondents. It's also common for researchers to find the average across respondents, to look at the quantity per score type to visually represent differences in relative volume, and finally to calculate the median. Similarly structured in the nature of their questions and answer options are the net satisfaction score and the net promoter score. However, the derivation of these scores differs in that you add together the total responses of 9s and 10s and subtract from that value the total responses of 1 through 6. Like the satisfaction surveys, a benchmark test will have users of a product or service respond to a series of questions about their experience. Unlike satisfaction surveys, however, a benchmark doesn't have to assess satisfaction or attitudinal intensity. The goal of a benchmark is to look at changes in survey responses, both positive and negative trends, taking a snapshot of customer feedback to compare with other snapshots. With these surveys, significance testing may be undertaken to look at differences between the customer's feedback of two different products or of a single product at two different points in time. With or without a significant test, the goal of benchmarking is to compare products or product states.
Quantitative researchers can develop an understanding of user sentiment with a product or feature by performing what is known as sentiment analysis. Unlike surveys, sentiment analysis gathers its data from text that can be harvested from feedback forms, social media posts, online product reviews, store ratings, and the such. In the simplest case, these postings or feedback forms are analyzed for overall sentiment, like happy or angry, either manually or through basic machine learning models. In these cases, sentiment analysis works again as something of a check engine light. It tells you that something might be wrong and that further exploration may be needed. For more in-depth analysis, a researcher will go through the comments more thoroughly, finding themes and features mentioned as a first step to understand which elements of an experience are problematic and or need to be worked on further. They can also work to develop classifiers for different types of user sentiment that they observe emerging regularly in postings and feedback to train a more sophisticated machine learning model designed to work with natural language processing. In this module, we've taken a broad look at some of the most commonly used UX research methods. We discuss qualitative research methods such as ethnography and diary studies, so we know that in the private sector, ethnography is not like academic ethnography, but attempts to emulate immersive participant observation methods to facilitate deep analysis. In diary studies, participants log their experiences or thoughts at the moment of engagement with the product or shortly after, providing insights into the context of the participant's life. We also discussed several types of user interviews, such as structured interviews, which have a scripted set of questions that the interviewer closely adheres to, unstructured interviews, which are loosely scripted around a set of key objectives or themes, and focus groups, which help explore social dynamics like the spread of knowledge and information and peer influence. We also discussed some common design research methods like usability testing, journey mapping, and card sorting. In usability testing, participants interact with a product prototype, and as they do so, the researcher notes their pain points, expectations, emotions, and ability to navigate the website, product, or service. In journey mapping, it sketches out the process users go through to reach an end state or goal in a product or service to ensure that designs enable users to navigate the product experience successfully. While card sorting involves the logical grouping of information and content and helps build the information architecture for a website or application. In terms of quantitative research methods, we discuss surveys and benchmarking. Surveys are used to gather feedback from many respondents quickly and will produce average rating scales, number counts, and percentages of responses. Customer satisfaction surveys are used to determine customer satisfaction with a given product, while net satisfaction and net promoter score surveys are similarly used to gauge the strength or intensity of participants' attitudes and feelings regarding their experience with the product. Sentiment analysts harvest data from things like feedback forums and social media posts and serve as another check engine light to conduct further research. Lastly, benchmark tests ask participants to respond to questions as they move through the experience of using a product. The goal is to understand the experience by looking at the averages and distributions. These tests are run at regular intervals to form benchmarks, which are then compared against the baseline or to another product to identify changes. So now that you've gotten oriented with the most common UX research methods, you should have a good idea of the areas you want to delve into further. So be sure to check out the course notes for additional resources to help you do so.